and welcome back to It's a Spectrum. This week's guest is a wonderful comedian that I used to see at open mics all the time, Lara Beitz.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
First try. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. I drove over here and now I'm over here.
Now we're here.
That's my story. How are you?
Good. I'm doing great. I'm a little tired. Long weekend.
Yeah.
And I just start talking about I do that a lot, and I'm trying not to. I have this like thing where, in order to show that I'm empathizing with somebody's like story, I start sharing anecdotes from my story,
Yes.
and then I just end up talking about myself, and people think it's rude.
No, that's what I do too. And I still think that's a good thing to do because it's better than telling you about yourself, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like it helps me stay out of like the, I don't know, you shoulds or just being like, oh, that's cool, is to be like, oh, my experience with that is this. And then they can talk more about their experience with the same thing. Like that doesn't mean we're on my thing now, you know?
Yeah. I do think that the people that have complained in the past have been people who like struggle with that not feeling heard kind of thing. It's like, that's their thing to deal with.
Yeah. I wish we could go to a clip of you just like bulldozing a conversation.
That would be fun. Bees. No. I talk a lot about bees. It's a thing. Well, I wanted to say, so you've been doing a lot of content recently about being autistic. Can I ask like what your journey has been with autism? Like,
yeah. So I was recently diagnosed.
right.
And it took like 5 months to get diagnosed from the
Initial
first intake. Yeah. But I've known that I was autistic for years. Like I've known for years that I was autistic. And yeah, I wrote some jokes about it. I was really hesitant to talk about it because I've heard people saying like, I didn't want to like come out of the closet, so to speak, because I've heard people saying things about like autism being trendy or like being overdiagnosed. But like, first of all, even if something's overdiagnosed, it doesn't mean that nobody has it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like some people still do have it.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's not real.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know. Another thing is just like, I just think that more people are being diagnosed because there's so much more information that's so like widespread about it. Like we have social media now. And so many more people are finding out about it and then identifying with the criteria and being like, oh, that sounds like me. Like the criteria, it's a perfect description of me. Yeah. And it's stuff where I didn't even notice that other people didn't do it, but it like put words to stuff that was like problems I've had in my relationships right. for my entire life, you know? And then being tested with the results, it like confirmed what I already knew, which is just like, I'm super smart at one thing. I scored in like the 99th percentile on verbal something. I scored in the 99th percentile on something, and everything else was like low on like slow processing speed, working memory, the ability to acquire and retain information, which like that's learning. That's what learning is.
Yeah.
And so looking back and like all these teachers, you know, who were telling my parents that I wasn't applying myself and everyone talking about like wanting me to reach my potential, but it turns out like my potential is lower than we thought. And I knew that at the goddamn time, you know?
Yeah. No, yeah, I've definitely experienced that. I've had to remind people like, yes, I'm a lot more sociable than like I used, because I used to be like kind of not selective mute, but I had issues talking in public.
Yeah.
And now I can talk to like complete strangers and it's fine.
Yeah.
But it's they're so stuck on the like social behavioral aspect of it that people forget. It's like, no, I also have a learning disability. Mm-hmm. Like I have a very specific detriment when it comes to problem solving. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not bad at it, but my brain takes longer because it takes a different route.
Yeah. That's just it. I'm slower. And it's interesting because like in recent years, I've just been having to tell people up front, like my manager will call me, present a bunch of information. And I've just had to tell him like, I can't process this as fast as you can talk. Yeah. Like when we do a call, I'm just taking it in. It's not that I'm not excited. I just need to then process it. You know, I just need the time for it to compute off the call. And then I'll very often like text him like 5 or 10 minutes later and be like, oh, that's really exciting. I'm really excited. It just didn't go in, it just didn't go in real time because I just was like intaking.
No, I've literally had to tell people like, I heard what you said.
Yeah.
It's just taking a second for my brain to hear. Like,
yeah,
I was listening, but I haven't heard you yet.
Right.
Just give it a second.
Yeah. Well, I had so much to say a second ago. I think I still have so much to say. I don't know. When did you get diagnosed?
So that's like an interesting thing for me because in relative terms, I'm still considered a late diagnosis. I got diagnosed around 13, 14.
Oh, okay.
Well, we started the assessment and they did like initially say like, we heavily think that this kid's autistic, but I had to like not fight the school, but like the school was trying to prove that it was just a social thing. And me and my mom were like trying to like, no, it's autism. So we had to go to specialists and get assessed like more than once. I think the official diagnosis came from a family I always forget if it's psychiatrist or psychologist. One of them just gives you medication.
Yeah, it's a psychiatrist.
So a family psychologist actually officially diagnosed me. And then I got that diagnosis verified by 2 specialists that exclusively research children with autism. So short answer was like 13 to 14.
Yeah.
And that's been an interesting thing because I've met a lot of adults now who were diagnosed later in life, like older than 25.
Yeah.
So comparatively, I seem relatively like older with it. But when I was coming up, I was the only kid I knew that didn't have it the whole time. Like the other kids who were, not worth saying, but they were like from better neighborhoods. They were white kids and male. So they got diagnosed at like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And that's like a common statistical thing. So they came up being treated for autism and I didn't know until high school. So that was the thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because they back when I was a kid, they were just not really diagnosing high functioning autism, and the high functioning autism that they were diagnosing, which they were calling Asperger's at the time, I can think of I maybe knew 1 or 2 boys, and it was very obvious immediately, but I didn't know a single girl in my whole school through college who was diagnosed with autism. It just wasn't. I feel like if I were a kid now, they would catch it in 5 seconds.
I've noticed that, and a lot of it has to do with just like general bias. They were going off of they whittled the current criteria of the time down to what was common in white males. So they weren't looking at people that didn't meet every single one of those criteria.
Yeah.
Like what I've noticed, and I think there's a study on it, it's a common thing, the whole struggle with nonverbal and word development is less common in women with autism. A lot of them do speak at a normal pace, but they're detrimental, they're deficit in other areas.
Yeah, I hit milestones and stuff. I was in speech therapy. But a lot of my verbal issues were social issues. So my whole life, it's saying stuff and it coming out really harsh, not being able to moderate my tone of voice, or things sound nice to me and to the other person. And I've gotten that feedback my whole life to the point that as an adult, if someone has a problem with me, I'm sure I did that. I'm sure I talked in a way that was upsetting to the person, which has opened me up to situations with people who I don't know, it makes you vulnerable if you assume that everything is your fault, because then if people come around who want everything to be your fault, you're a really easy target, because I'm I can't see it, I just have that blindness to it. But I have even heard if I'll hear part of a podcast or something, when I've listened back to stuff, I've heard my tone of voice and I'm just that is not how it sounded to me at the time. That's not what I was feeling. How that sounds is not how I felt. And I've even had professionals. I even had a therapist once who kept insisting I was mad. And it was really frustrating for both of us because I wouldn't admit that I was mad because I wasn't. I still don't think I was. And she was you're obviously irritated. And I was well, now because we're fighting, but I wasn't mad, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I've just had that for my whole life.
Yeah, I've been on like both sides of that to the point where I've become very like, it can irritate people, but I've become very communicative so that even if there is misunderstanding, we can, if it's not a big deal, we can like pull back from as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Like if I misread someone and I'm like, "Are you okay?" and they're like, "Yeah, why do you keep saying?" Then I'll describe what I'm seeing, and then we can like break down why I'm seeing that.
Yeah.
Often it's like they're dehydrated or something.
Yeah, they're often dehydrated, I find. Yeah, one thing that I'll say is like, I want to like, and I maybe shouldn't apologize right away. Maybe that's why I'm having, but like, I want to apologize if my tone is harsh right now. I feel like it is because you're reflecting that back to me. Like I've said, like I can tell from your tone that my tone is putting something out there. And this is with like people I know where, you know, when they start talking and they're like, okay, well, I was just trying to what? Then I'm like, I can tell by your tone that I put something out there. I really didn't intend to.
Yeah.
You know, so that we can kind of like come back down. And I have had people be like, okay, thank you for saying that. Yeah, because I thought you were mad, you know.
I've definitely, my experience has been more like there's things I'm trying to do theatrically that have helped me like acclimate in person. Like I like voice acting and I like doing impressions. And so teaching myself how to act has also taught me like how to respond to people. Like one thing I do it as a joke, but I'm like serious about it. I tell a lot of autistic people is like, if you don't seem interested, just go like this. Like widen your eyes, and then you seem so much more attentive because you seem like aware.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's such a small thing. I was like 90% of expression is in the eyebrows. That's why we are bad at it. That's why we look weird when we smile.
Dude, it's so nice to have that in my back pocket now. I think you just changed my life. I really think you just changed my life.
And I've gotten good at, I do bits about it sometimes. Like I learned how to, I have a collection of laughs. Which I realize is not normal. So when people are like, I don't know if you're autistic, I'm like, I am. I have a file cabinet of laughs. But I used to do a bit about it, like how I could change the laugh depending on the situation. And then I have like favorite laughs that nobody likes. Like this thing called I call it the George McFly chuckle, where it's like all the bounce but none of the air. So it's just like, It's awful, but I think it's hilarious. Nobody likes it. I do apologize.
I feel like I'm going to see that in my sleep tonight somehow. I'm going to hear that. It felt to me like a knock on the door.
Yeah. I call it like an airless chuckle. Like it's like a...
But like it's someone who was not invited. You know what I'm saying? Like an unwelcome tap on my hotel room door in a strange town is how that felt.
Like I didn't know this motel had a 19th century door knocker on it. 19th, they should have said 13th.
Have people said to you that they don't know if you're autistic?
So, some people struggle, mostly family at this point.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite bits where like people will be like, when people first meet me, they're like, "The fuck's wrong with this asshole?" Mm-hmm. And then they meet me and they find out I'm autistic and they're like, "What? You seem fine to me." And it's like,
yeah, and it's like, do I really seem fine to you?
Yeah, and it's the funniest thing I hear a lot. I know some people are used to saying high functioning. I'm one of the people that's transitioned to just saying like low support need opposed to high functioning, just because of the whole Nazi history behind it. It's a lot.
What?
Oh, you don't know? I know that sounded forced because I talk about it a lot, but that was genuine, I swear.
No, I believe it was genuine.
No, I know.
But it was a little autistic to be like, you don't know about this very specific
No, I can tell from Josh, so it sounded like I was like,
I can kind of connect now what you're saying.
The term, so the name Asperger comes from its originator, Johann Asperger, who worked for the Nazis and like was doing research on low and high functioning Jewish kids in concentration camps. So when he meant low functioning, he meant like they couldn't work. So they were meant to be like, and then if they were high functioning, they were cognizant enough to take direction and then therefore work in camps.
So survivors?
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. But the whole debate about the language is like, it's not language that was developed to benefit us. It's to benefit non-autistic people. So that's why I choose to change the language. But I understand why some people fight against it.
I guess my thing with like just my initial reaction to low support needs, and I'm not pro or con, whatever works for people, but like I don't necessarily have low support needs, but I have received low support.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think it's more to describe, like again, I feel like to some degree is still for other people, but it is acknowledging like I'm definitely level 1, not level 3. I'm not invalid in a wheelchair.
See, I like that.
Yeah. There's levels.
I don't know if we're still saying invalid as long as are we?
I mean, I've heard it.
Really?
Still, is it not?
Did it go back? Did it go out? And then did invalid come back? Invalid was out.
If it's out, this is the first I've heard of it.
Invalid was out, but that might, I don't know. Who knows?
I only use it to describe people that need like physical, consistent, hands-on support.
Right.
Can't eat by themselves, communicate to any degree. But I think I like the language because it encompasses people who like may have a detriment aesthetically, but don't have a detriment cognitively. Like there's people who are nonverbal, but they do communicate. They just can't formulate words. Like I met 2 people that had they were autistic, but they also had a muscular disorder that affected their jaw. So they literally couldn't form words, but they could communicate. They could sign, they could write. They could technically also like talk. And I've, personally met like a variety of different variances in that area. So I do appreciate the sentiment behind the language change because it is like understanding more like it isn't like a either you're this autistic or you're that. There's a spectrum, hence the title. What are we Googling again? Oh, I knew we were Googling something, but I forgot.
INVALID.
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 That's a funny. That's such a fun. Now I see why
kinda
people
what
didn't
I'm
want to
saying,
use it,
dude. Yeah. I'm like, wait, you can say invalid, but I can't say high functioning.
I didn't hear it until I
send me the fucking manual after this so that I know what I can and can't say? Because it's not
so
adding
funny.
up in my brain. But
I've never had to like spell it to someone, so I've never tried that
I'm like,
before.
sorry, dude, but yours is worse.
I know, it's so
Flat out. I was so ready to just be like, yeah, there's nuance and whatever works. And I'm like,
Invalid.
nah. Turns out I'm right and you're wrong.
That's funny.
It's highly offensive.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Sorry. Got his ass. Sorry, I just got really impassioned by my victory about the word invalid because I felt bad for supporting the Nazis accidentally. And then looking
I know,
back
right? I was like telling you, like, no, you're a Nazi supporter. Invalid. Terrible.
like, unless the person is, invalid. I'm like, wait. Yeah?
I don't want to dive into exactly what we talked about last time, but what do you think about, what are your thoughts on autistic representation?
Like autistic people being in
Playing
TV
autistic
shows and stuff?
characters and
Playing
stuff,
autistic
yeah.
characters?
Well, like if the character's going to be, it makes more sense for the actor to be. Personally,
There we go. You tell me the right answer and then I'll agree.
a lot of people are very like up and roar about it. And it's like, I am definitely not going to fight someone about it. Like, I'm not going to be like, we should cancel so-and-so for playing. I do think that autistic people are better at it.
Right.
And there's a lot of examples of autistic people just being actors and nobody noticing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I hate that the first thing that comes to mind is a kid's show because I don't think you'll know this person, but Kim Rhodes.
No.
She was in Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. She played the mom. She was also in Supernatural, I think. Bunch of, 2010 television. But she's autistic. Dan Aykroyd is
No
autistic.
kidding. I didn't know that.
He's usually my go-to just because I love Ghostbusters, but some people think he's racist. So
Why do people think Dan Aykroyd's racist? Dan Aykroyd's bad now?
I haven't heard
You
anything.
got your
personally,
finger on the
but
pulse, dude. I gotta, start Googling something.
Anthony
now.
Hopkins is
Anthony
autistic.
Hopkins is 90 motherfucking years old. So
And
let's
he's autistic.
start
And
there.
he found out, like...
oh, he's autistic. I thought you were going to say he was racist.
No, I was going to say, but...
and I was just
the
like,
funny
I'm going to
thing
stop you
is-
right now. Because that motherfucker's 100. So
The funny thing about that is he just found out he's autistic, like 5 years ago.
how embarrassing. You lived 85 years autistically, and then can you imagine having 85 years of life to look back on? And you were autistic the whole time? How embarrassing. All the interactions where the person was like, okay. And you're like, oh my God.
But what were your thoughts on, like, have you seen The Good Doctor?
What? I still don't know what your thoughts were. I want you to give me the answer, and then I'll align myself with that.
I'm definitely not opposed to it. I do just think autistic people are better at it.
Right.
Because there's examples of autistic people just being good at acting in general, but specifically, like, I like referencing The Good Doctor because in the recent season, they have an autistic woman playing an autistic character next to him.
Yeah.
And you can see the difference in the characters. Like,
That actor is not autistic, correct?
he's not.
I did not get into that show.
I personally, I know why everyone likes the show. I hate his portrayal. It's very robotic. He walks around like a blind person, which is a whole other realm of people to offend. But I can see what he's trying to emulate, but it's like very stagey. Like it feels like he stared at autistic kids for like weeks and then did what they did.
Yeah.
Or what he thought they were doing. Versus like they have this autistic woman on and she's hilarious and she's like a lot more natural with it. And so I think that there's a clear distinction, but people will argue that he's good at it.
I mean, I think if it's like, between an actor who's autistic and an actor who's not to play an autistic role, if all other things are equal, then go with the autistic person, I guess, because they're probably going to give a more authentic performance because they're autistic. But if someone's like way better for the part, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not the world's best actor. So I think that there are definitely people who could play an autistic character better than I could if they can like cry and emote and like, stuff that I just don't have the skill set.
Right. And that's
really
what I mean
do,
is like, I definitely agree with that sentiment. I have yet to see someone who's good at being autistic that's not autistic.
Yeah.
And
I can't think of that
personal.
many autistic characters, so I don't know.
Oh, I have a no. I do this thing where I collect like coded characters. Like if they were autistic, it would make sense.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to think, like Kramer from Seinfeld,
Dwight Schrute.
Emily, what's her name? From Scrubs, the blonde one. Elliot Reed.
Oh. Interesting.
I think so. Anyway, we're getting off topic. Actually, no, we're not. This was exactly what I wanted to talk about. Well, how's it been since you've been diagnosed? Because you said it was relatively... like, how long ago were you...
October 4th.
This year?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I thought it was, like, way earlier.
No.
So it's only been, like, a month?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But you said before, like, you've been trying to be diagnosed for a while.
Yeah, and I mean, I've known for so long. It just also was like, what's the point? Like, you don't get anything. You don't like get any money or like a certificate.
Right.
The reason that I wanted it is just like, it's validating. And honestly, like I have, family members who like did not believe I was autistic and just thought I was like picky and weird, and and so I'm glad that I have like a label for it now. It also has like really helped me to meet myself where I'm at. So like I don't have the expectations for myself that I would have for other people. So I'm not like I should be writing stand up 8 hours a day. Instead, I'm like I have like basically an adult chore chart in my phone where it's like today I did and left to do. And it'll be like write jokes for 10 minutes and then you can like whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I'll sit down and I'll write. Like I've been getting so much more done now that I'm treating myself like someone who needs a different system,
right?
You know? And that started... And I don't even know why there was this change because, again, like, I knew. I've been saying it for a year. Like, I've been saying that I'm autistic for a year. Like, I knew. But something about, like, meeting with her, and she said during the intake, she was like, I recommend that we move forward with testing. She said, if I could diagnose you with autism based on this conversation, I would. And something about that just was so, like, I felt like she saw me. It was so nice. It's someone who is a professional, saw it and was like, yeah, it's obvious. Because I'm like, thank you. Yes, it is obvious, and I look back on everything. It's obvious everywhere. Like, yeah, something that's interesting for me is like, now that I am posting some stand-up about it, these clips are a minute long. And so I'll be talking about no more than one tiny element of my autism. And then I'll have comments from people and I get a lot of like, oh, I do this. Am I autistic? And it's like, first of all, I
don't know.
Can't diagnose anybody. But also it's not just like one thing. Like it's not just like I like soft fabric, so I'm autistic. It's not just I'm sensitive to sounds, so I'm autistic. Or
because you could be those other things isolated. Yeah. And not, some people are
there's
just picky.
There's so many criteria for it and no one has all of them or none of them,
Yeah, what I usually tell people is like, there's resources you can look at if you're interested in pursuing that. Mm-hmm. I usually recommend embrace-autism.com, link in the bio. I don't, because they have the RADS-R, which is no longer like an official, it doesn't qualify as a diagnosis. It's how they used to assess people. But there was a study done that the RADS-R is more accurate when self-administered than when clinically administered. So I think it's a good starting point because it gets you thinking about how you perceive like your current state of existing and whether or not that aligns with the autistic perspective. Because they phrase questions in such a specific way that I feel like some of them only make sense if you are autistic. So I usually tell people like, look into it. And if you still feel like you identify, then see if you can pursue it. But I can't diagnose you. That's up to you. That's your journey.
Yeah, it's so funny that you should say that. I don't remember what like the tests were called that they gave me. I just remember they gave me an IQ test and then other tests. But one of the things was they asked me a lot of questions, and part of my autism is like taking things 100% literally. Yeah. So when I'm asked a question and given a 5-point scale, I take it 100% literally. So it said like, have you thought about suicide in the last 6 weeks or 6 months? And I remembered I was sweeping my hallway and I thought to myself, I wish I was dead. I don't wish I was dead at all. I have no intention to kill I love my life. I do not want to die at all. But I remembered that I had that thought. And so I said that I had thought about suicide in the last 6 weeks or and I got like multiple phone calls that showed up in my report. She mentioned it during our session, and I kept being like, I'm not suicidal. Like they were worried they needed to know if they needed to report it. And I'm like, no, I'm not suicidal. I'm autistic. Yeah. And I took it literally. And in my report, there was all this stuff where I was like, this is not me. And it said like, blah, 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 someone can have all these problems, or this can be consistent with over-reporting, like they're likely over-reporting. And I called to be like, hey, there's been a miscommunication. Like, and she told me that the report is AI generated. So she was like, that's not what I think of you. And she said, how you responded is how autistic people typically respond. Right. Like your response was very common for autistic people, which is like the over-reporting thing always gets flagged because people with autism tend to take things very literally. So she was like, this is what I would expect. But this report came and it said I was like likely to be violent, that I like didn't like my family. Like it just said all these horrible things. And I was like, this is not. Yeah. And I was so ready to like plead my case and be like, nobody would ever tell you any of this about me. But a robot might, I guess. So don't trust robots.
They're trying to get us.
Did we just say that at the same time?
Yeah, I think so.
That's great. That's the clip.
No, yeah, I definitely get those frustrations. That's why I like the self-administered. Like, I think that if you're pursuing diagnosis, it is better, like, to actually see someone. I think that it should be people who are interested in finding out whether or not someone's autistic. Like, there was a couple times where I saw, like, a physician or a mental health professional who, like, was tired of this generation's like increase in diagnosis. So they weren't trying to help me. They were just trying to kind of get me out of here.
Right. They had an agenda.
Yeah. And it was frustrating. Like I mentioned before the podcast, I'm on ADHD medication now. It's taken me like half a decade to get on this stuff because every time they read my file, the first thing they read is the autism. It's like, no, keep reading. The next page talks about ADHD. Like I have more than one thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this. 3 different doctors told me this.
Right.
And so they're trying to, adjust my diet and they're trying to treat anxiety and depression first.
Yeah.
Because they think that I just think that I have ADHD. It's like, no, like I've forgotten to make this appointment for an entire year. I have ADHD.
Yeah, dude.
Like I'm forgetful. I'm spacey. I have issues with, and it goes back to like, it's because I know what it feels like when it's affecting me, like, and my problem solving. Like I know when I'm experiencing executive dysfunction and it's like, it's not depression. I'm not sad. I just can't do.
Right. I'm just lying in bed until 2 p.m. trying to plan out my whole day and the order that I'm going to do things. And am I going to do this and then this? Well, if I do that, then I'll be tired. And then if I do that, then there's your day.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, I don't know. That's why routine is so important for me. I follow my routine no matter where I am.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like it's funny because they'll recommend it and I'm not with him anymore, but a recent therapist that I had was like, you just need routine. I'm like, don't you think I've tried? That's what I'm saying. I have ADHD. Like, they're like, you just have to set reminders on your phone. He's like, yeah, but now I have to remember to set a reminder. Do you understand? Like, I can't do it. Just do it. Now I'm getting aggressive, but yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, it's just incredibly difficult to talk to people who aren't interested in figuring it out if it's real or not. Like because I have other things. My main diagnosis papers, my original diagnosis is autism with obsessive compulsive disorder, ADHD, and generalized anxiety and panic disorder. And so trying to get any of them differently when the first thing you read is autism is difficult. Like I remember some lady she's like, you don't seem like you have OCD. I'm like, you just met me. It's been like 2 minutes and we haven't even talked about my OCD yet.
Right.
Like you can't get that from talking to me. It's also like, I'm almost 30. I've been dealing with it since high school. This is me doing better. That doesn't mean it went away,
Yeah. Yeah. I was just talking to my boyfriend about that because we were friends for like 5 or 6 years before we ever dated. And he was like, I had no idea that you were like, you don't seem autistic. And I was like, that's because you spent an hour at a time with me. Like if we're just going to like play tennis or do a podcast or whatever, like you might not catch it, but that's because you didn't see me eat the same thing for every meal and like prepack it for like whatever. You didn't see what happened if I like couldn't do a puzzle that morning or if I did, like you just don't know. Obsessive compulsive disorder is not something unless you catch someone at just the right time or know a lot about autism or OCD where you can like detect that, because now I think that there are people who have met me and immediately known.
Yeah.
But most of the people in my life, the response has been like, oh yeah, I can see that. There have been some like, yeah, no shit,
There's been like a couple. Like I remember the day I got diagnosed, I came back to school and I was like, apparently I'm autistic. And literally someone was like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That guy watches my comedy sometimes. Shout out to Andre.
How did that feel?
Weird. I definitely think like now I'm a lot more comfortable with talking about it. I'm a lot more like adamant about where I struggle and where I don't. But I do think I was a lot more resistant to it that first year. Like I did not like that perception of now I'm seen as one of the special ed kids because I knew what that looked like. I'd seen that from the outside and now I was suddenly like under that microscope or label. And so I didn't want to admit it. And it took me a while to get used to it. A lot of it was like when I started getting help for it, which a lot of it came from like my mom fighting for me. Thank you. She's here in the room. Once I saw the benefits of like actually addressing what was wrong, I was like, okay, no, I need to acknowledge when it's a problem because otherwise I won't get better at it.
Yeah.
Because, the autism never goes away, but there's things that I can change and work on. Like this, we've seen each other before, but I've never actually talked to you before.
Yeah.
8 years ago, this would not have been possible for me.
Yeah.
I had extreme anxiety about stuff like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I said hi to you and you straight faced me.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry.
yeah, you've blossomed.
Yeah,
It's
there's been
beautiful.
moments. There's one funny story where, so I used to I'd do my set and then I'd leave. I would go home.
I know.
And one time I pissed off Jerry. Was it Jerry Garcia? Jeff Garcia, the voice actor. Jeff Garcia. I pissed him off on accident. I had no, and it's funny because I'm an animation, I'm a voice acting nerd. I had no idea what he looked like. I only knew his name and who he played. Mm-hmm. So I'm coming off of, I think, the open mic, and he's trying to give me notes and trying to give me praise, and I'm like, oh, thank you. And then I get into an Uber and I leave, and apparently that upset him.
Dude, I did that recently. I did Pauly Shore's show. It was his first episode of it, and
Ooh.
he was like, you can leave.
Oh, my mom has met Jeff Garcia since then. I don't think he knows we're related.
He was like, yeah, you can leave, you can hang out, whatever. And I took it literally and didn't think there was a wrong answer. And I started to leave, and he was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I kind of froze, but then everyone was looking at me. And so I was like, well, now I'm fleeing, And so I fled and then texted him later and was just like, I told him, I was like, I'm autistic, dude. I did not know what was going on. I totally misread the situation. I'm so sorry. I really appreciated it. It was really cool. But yeah, I totally get that. I feel like I can feel that story as you're telling it, because I've had that feeling when it's like, when I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go.
Yeah. I talk about that. Have you heard of spoon theory?
Yeah.
I use that a lot.
A spoon is like a unit of energy.
Yeah. I talk about that a lot, and it's tough. I get into debates about it too, because people will be like, so you're just tired. I'm like, no, I'm not tired.
No.
But I've expended the amount of energy I had set aside for other people.
Right.
Now I'm only focused on my immediate needs, and it's distracting.
Yeah. And for me, and maybe you can relate to this, once the sounds are too much, once I'm at the point where the overstimulation, once I notice it, it just is like someone is turning up the dial this until I get out of the situation. It doesn't stay at the same level. It actually gets louder. It feels like it actually just everything gets louder. The lights get brighter, and it just keeps happening until I'm gone. I just have to leave. And so honestly, that's part of it is I know what they don't know, which is that the rudeness of me walking out will be better for my reputation than the rudeness of what I might do if I stay. You know what I'm melting down. Yeah.
I've definitely gotten a lot better at how much I can take and how to I have a preparation routine. If I'm on a way to a show, I don't talk to anyone. I tell them why I'm on. That's been the biggest thing for me, is just explaining why. So even if they don't like it, they have to understand, because it's necessary for me to function. Mm-hmm. So on the way to a show, I'm working on my jokes, I'm timing myself, and I'm listening to music so nobody talks to me. And I have headphones, and then I have earphones, and then I have headphones, and the headphones are supposed to be don't approach me.
Yes.
It's a symbol to other people. It's just I'm purposefully isolating myself.
Yeah. I have AirPods, and then I have big noise canceling headphones that I will wear in airports with white noise or with nothing, or with repeating scenes or episodes of The Office.
Yeah.
Or with my meditation ambient thing. But sometimes just with nothing, so that people won't start conversations with me, because there are too many overlapping sounds there. It's not that I don't like people. It's just there's so much other stimulation that on top of that, to expect me to sort through all of those sounds to listen to one person talking to me,
Right.
it's not going to happen, and it's going to like hurt me. Like it's just so hard. It's too much.
For me, that's like the biggest thing people misunderstand about what autism is. And, I always make sure to say, like, I'm not a medical professional. This is my personal interpretation based on my experience. But how I perceive autism is it's a processing disorder. Our brains have not, aren't made with that switch to decipher what is and is not important information. Mm-hmm. So at any given moment, we're not filtering anything. It's all just coming in.
Yeah.
And I tell people, like, I'll use an example when I'm talking one-on-one with someone. It's like, right now, your brain has told you to focus on me. So you don't hear the people walking downstairs. You don't hear the espresso machine on. You don't hear flies out the window. My brain doesn't know how to do that. So I am hearing those. It's not that I tell people when it comes to like hypersensitivity, it's like, it's not that I hear better than you. It's that my brain hasn't learned to ignore those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been listening to the freeway and the people out there. Like I hear it all the time. Yeah. I used to wear when I was like dating, I would wear earplugs even on dates so that I could hear what the person was saying, because like I pair it with like, and I didn't realize how much I rely on lip reading until people started wearing masks during COVID, and I couldn't understand what anybody was saying.
Yeah.
And so, I'll put earplugs in because it turns down like the far, then I'm not listening to like someone's change jingling as much. And even if I can hear the person's voice quieter, it helps me to hear them because I can read their lips.
Right. No, yeah, I used to be the same way. I still wear headphones, but I used to like just have them on all the time, or I'd have like a hoodie on, and it was just like ways to cancel out noise.
Yeah.
I would do a thing when I was too overstimulated where I would like simulate a deprivation tank. Mm-hmm. Because when I was a kid, I had a cousin who had a swimming pool, and I liked like, I had to ask for permission, otherwise they'd get scared and think I was drowning.
Yeah.
But I'd ask to go and float in the pool, and I would literally just float with like just my ears under the water.
Yeah.
And it was like a deprivation. And so to simulate that as a kid or growing up, I would like fill my hands with water and splash like if I'm diving in water, and then I would just hold onto my ears and just like wait for the silence to take over.
Yeah.
And it worked, but it looked weird in public.
That's so interesting. I've always loved to swim, and I never thought about the relationship between that and my autism. But I've always loved that feeling of just everything else going away. And then there's the sensory element just of like the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I really relate to that.
So thank you for being on the show. This has been a great conversation. I was really like, when I saw the first clips of you announcing that you were diagnosed, I was like, hell yeah, another one on our team.
Be clear that it was stand up. I don't want people to think I announced it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wasn't like everybody listen up. I've been diagnosed. It was so self-serving. There was no announcement. It was just stand-up clips. Yeah.
I used to joke that because some people have like coming out parties and stuff, transitional parties. Like it'd be funny if we had unmasking parties.
Yeah.
But no, thank you for coming. It was comedy. She's a comedian. Did I say I should? I feel like I said that at the beginning. Yeah, she does.
I don't know
comedy.
if you did.
Well,
but I am.
Yeah, and she's very hilarious. Check out the links in the bio. You said you're working on a special, but you don't have.
Yeah, I just taped a special. It's called Stoppable, but we're editing it, so I don't know when or where it'll be released. But watch for that, please.
Yeah, so you should follow her on all the things to find out. Again, it'll be in the bio. And I haven't thought of an outro yet, so I've just been saying Autism Speaks can go fuck itself. Have a good day.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this was fun.